And TJ's going to get me going back there tonight. And welcome to Riverside Baptist Church, Kenly, North Carolina, on a Wednesday night. Tonight's message will be a little bit different than a typical message per se. I thought about this, and I really thought about not doing it more so than preaching the message. Um, I don't know, it just seemed, thank you, Steve, that I wanted to get away from it, and then I said, nope, this is what I'm going to do, and do the best I can with it, with that. But we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 23, but we're going to be dealing with a subject tonight that is controversial in many ways. And for the congregation, the ones that are here tonight, some of you may say, why in the world would Pastor Ken preach that message, considering the situation, circumstances we're in? And it has to do with raising children. Children. And my generation, my parents, mainly my father, he raised that generation raised children different than the way children are raised today. Okay? As I look out tonight, it's obvious that not one person here, to my knowledge, has a child living at home that's not an adult. I mean, let's face it, folks, we're getting old. Our children are adults. So why would a pastor preach a message concerning raising children when the congregation has adult children? And I kept coming back to that. I just kept coming back to it, and I said, what's the benefit of it? I mean, this is a message that my pastor, Dan Walser, Preacher Walser, would have preached, and we had Katie and Camille coming along, and folks, it was just like everything he said, that's what we needed to do. It was good advice and good timing and taken to heart. But today, how are you going to get a group of adults that have children at home? Where are you going to find them at to get the message across? And not only that, how many of you, I know your children are grown, but how many of you have grandchildren? Now, I will acknowledge grandchildren are different than children. It's not the primary responsibility, but you do have an influence on them, right? You hope so. I agree with that, with it. But, it's limited at best. It's different with that. So why preach on it? Well, let's begin reading, and hopefully we'll get somewhere here in a minute. All right, Proverbs chapter 23, beginning in verse 10. All right, Proverbs 23:10. Remove not the old landmark, and enter not into the fields of the fatherless. Let's pause right there, and that is this. Years ago, I preached a message about remove not the old landmark, the ancient landmark. Two places in Scripture gives reference. This is one of them. And I'll go down in history in my family as Pastor Ken or Dad or Ken preached that message so many times, I know it by heart. And it was just a message that I preached at different places with that about removing not the ancient landmark. And so I want Charlotte to know up front tonight, this is not that message. And she's probably saying that I'm glad because I don't want to hear it anymore with that. But that's another message for another time. And picking up in verse 11. For the Redeemer is mighty, he shall plead their cause with thee. Apply thy heart unto instruction, and thy ears to the words of knowledge. Withhold not correction from the this is the verse. This verse right here If today this one verse right here is so controversial, then it's amazing to me. All right, withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with a rod, he shall not die. Now, growing up, my father didn't beat me with a rod. He didn't. But it was a belt that I got a whipping with. And there's a difference between a whipping and a beating. Amen? But the correction was applied. And today, let's face it, folks, correction is not applied. And when it is applied, it's often not applied correctly. That's the difference with that. Verse 14, thou shalt beat him with the rod and shalt deliver his soul from hell. We're going to continue on in just a minute, but I'll give you one illustration of a situation I had. In the school setting, a fellow came to school and his thumb was busted open. And he was a teenager, don't get me wrong, and he was a cut up, but his thumb was busted bad. And he kept coming to the office to get it doctored on or rebandaged or whatever. And they told me, said, his thumb is messed up. And so I looked at it and I said, look, man, and I remembered the guy's name. I said, look, and I'm going to try not to call it if I do this by mistake completely. But I said, listen, you need stitches in your thumb. I didn't ask him what happened. I said, you need stitches in your thumb. He said, I don't want to go to get stitches in my thumb. I said, there's no way around it. You need to get stitches in your thumb. I said, I'm going to call your mother. He said, do not call his mother, single parent, raising two boys. Said, do not call my mother. I said, look, man, we got to do this. He said, do not call my mother. I said, what happened to your thumb? He said, I'm not going to tell you. I said, well, we're getting ready to get to it now because we're going to figure this thing out. There's something going on here besides your thumb is busted all to pieces. And he said, do not call. He said, listen, do whatever you want to do, but do not call my mother. I said, we don't have a choice in this. You've got to have medical attention. Something has to be done. And so I called his mother. And I told her, I said, his thumb's busted open. She said, yep. I said, he needs stitches in it, and, we need for you to come pick him up and take him. She said, I'm not doing it. I said, you don't understand. His thumb's really messed up. She said, I know. She said, do what you want to, but I'm not taking him to the hospital. I said, well, I didn't ask point blank, why not? I just said, he needs to go. She said, I'm not taking him. So I went back to him. I said, look, I talked to your mother. He said, let me guess. She said she ain't coming to get me and she ain't taking me. I said, no, you're right. I said, tell me what's going on. And then he told me. He said, my mother got mad at me last night and hit me with a broom. And she hit me so hard with the broom several times that I put my hand up like this to block it, and then she hit my thumb with a broom and split it open. I said, this ain't good. He said, what you going to do? I said, you're going to the emergency room. So I took him to the emergency room. With the emergency room, point blank, they looked at his thumb. You got to have stitches. Let's get the mother on the phone. I said, I've already talked to her. She ain't coming. They said, well, we got to do something. And by the way, how did this happen? I said, ask him. They asked him, how did it happen? He said, my mama told me if I told how it happened, she was going to kill me. I said, well, you're dead because you done told me. Anyway, he told them. They fixed his thumb up. They called the mother. The mother finally came. And about the time she got there, I noticed there was a police presence. She came in. The police were there and talked to her. They charged her with a form of child abuse. It went through the social services and all that. They did not take him away from the home or anything like that. That wasn't it. But I've often thought about this aspect of it, and I felt sorry for him, but I told the mother this. She told me exactly what happened. I said, you know, I can understand why you hit him with a broom, but it don't mean it's right. I said, we put up with him all day. She said, yeah, and I got tired of him last night, and I hit him with a broom. And he, being the cut up that he was, stuck his thumb up in the air and said, I bet you can't hit it. And she said, I showed him I could. She said, but I promise you this, he'll never stick his thumb up again and say, I bet you can't hit it. It was a very delicate situation. And it was a bad situation. You follow me? And you have children today that are abused in a lot of different ways. Incorrect discipline doesn't work. It has to be done out of love, in the right manner. It has to be done consistent. The list could go on and on and on. But what we have is children that don't understand discipline have grown up and become parents, and now they don't know how to raise their children. And now that's gone another generation on down. So we have a problem with how children are being raised today. I'm not saying your children were raised wrong. I'm not saying mine were raised wrong. I'm not saying anybody that's listening, your children were raised wrong. But I am saying there's a problem today with how children are being raised in a lot of homes. It's a challenge for a single parent to raise children. God didn't design it that way. Let's face it. The problem is nestled in the home. And it creates problems. So we're going to talk about this. All right. Continue reading. In verse 15. My son, if thy heart be wise, my heart shall rejoice, even mine. Yea, my reins shall rejoice when thy lips speak right things. Let not thy heart envy sinners, but be thou in the fear of the Lord all the day long. For surely there is an end, and thine expectation shall not be cut off. Hear thou, my son, and be wise, and guide thy heart in the way. Be not among winebibbers, among riotous eaters of flesh, for the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty, and drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags. Hearken unto thy father, that thou begot thee, and despise not thy mother when she is old. Buy the truth and sell it not, also wisdom, instruction, and understanding. The father of the righteous shall greatly rejoice, and he that begetteth a wise child shall have joy of him. The father and thy mother shall be glad, and she that bare thee shall rejoice. My son, give me thy heart, and let thy eyes observe my ways. As a parent, isn't it a blessing when your children are doing right? Doesn't it bring a smile on your face? The opposite of that, when your children do wrong, it's just like a dagger that sticks in you. It hurts. Let's face it, when you were a child, when I was a child, we didn't understand that. When my father said, this is going to hurt you as much as it hurts me. Number one, I still don't believe that to this day. I was under the impression, you say hurt. I said, it's killing me, so you must be getting ready to die. That was my mind. I'm telling you. But I will say this. He had my attention. Raising children. Number one aspect of it is, number one, somebody will raise your children. somebody will raise your children. And more than likely, it's going to be a group of somebodies, not just one. And if you don't do your part, somebody else is going to pick up and do it. That's not popular preaching today. By the way, God gave the responsibility of children and rearing children to the parents. He did. You ever thought about this? Young people have children. Do you know why? God designed for young people to have children. Because they get on your nerves? That's true. You don't tell you why young people have children? God designed it that way. It's because we don't have the energy to do it. We don't. They're like that little pink bunny that keeps on going and on and going and going, and you want to take the batteries out, but there's no batteries to take out. And sometimes I think I need some of those batteries. Parents need to recognize that it's their responsibility. Also, not only their responsibility to raise their children, but notice what it says when you continue on in verse 20. It says, "Be not among winebibbers, among riotous eaters of flesh." It gives an indication here that you're to watch who you're to be around. So another responsibility of parents is not only raising their children, but to watch and protect them from being around bad influences. Now, isn't it a great conversation to have with your child when you sit down and say, "Listen, I don't believe that person's a good influence for you. I don't believe you need to be around them." They really like that when you tell them that, don't they? They don't like it at all. As a matter of fact, I'm convinced most of them, when that conversation takes place, most of them go straight to that individual and say, "My daddy said I can't be around you," or "My mama said you're not good for me." And then it's a bigger conflict. Are y'all out there? Raising children's tough. Keep in mind that we're to guide our children as we shape their hearts for them to reach the potential that God has for them. They're not ours. We're stewards of what God has given us. We're to mold them. We're to make them. We're to encourage them. We're to discipline them. We're to teach and train. We're to instill things into them. We're to take what God's blessed us with, and it's all for Him. "My son, if thy heart be wise, my heart shall rejoice, even mine. Yea, my reign shall rejoice when thy lips speak right things." As a parent, that's Proverbs 23:15-16. Again, our children are grown. What do we do? Well, there's a battle for your children's heart, no matter how old your child is. There's a battle for your heart as well concerning it. Well, first off, we need to understand a little bit about the true enemy. I hope that won't my phone. If it is, I'm going to get rid of it. It was not my phone. Okay. I don't know whose it is, but hey, do y'all know what happened right here at Riverside for me? Have y'all ever heard the story? Pastor Payne was the pastor. Had an evangelist in. I call his name. Y'all will remember who that was. It was Ernie Lundy. And I brought a group from Snow Hill up to the church. And we came in, and we sat right here. It was one fellow that was driving on his own, and he got lost from Snow Hill to here. Could you imagine that? I mean, it could have happened, trust me. Anyway, So I had my phone and I was talking with him, trying to give him directions on how to get here. And Pastor Payne called on me to pray. And he said, come on up here and pray. And so I came up, stood up here and prayed. And about the time I got about right there where Brother Philip was, my phone started ringing. I never looked up. I never acknowledged it was me. I walked right straight onto the back, right out that door, right on out there. And it was that man trying to get here again. But I thought to myself, of all places for that to happen when I come back here, I said, I don't want that to happen. But anyway, that phone can get you in trouble, can't it? Raising children. What age should they have a phone? How many of you think it's good for them to have a phone when they're 35? You know where I'm headed with this one now already, okay? How many of you think they ought to have a phone when they're 5, 10, 15? I got a hand up. 15, 16. We got the phones about that age, and I want to make sure. They actually had a little track phone thing before then with that, but that was before the internet was on it. But you know, that phone can be a great asset, but it can really be a problem. Really be a problem. Decisions that you make as parents. Number one is this: the enemy is real. The enemy is real. The ultimate enemy being Satan. The battle deals with the devil, the flesh, and the world. Driven by Satan himself. The flesh, the appeal. The world, the pull. The devil, the trap. All aspects of it. Our enemy for you, for your children, your grandchildren, is powerful, and he is intent on destroying someone's future. The world today doesn't see a true enemy. I think Dave Kistler is the one that said this, and that is this: if you cannot define the enemy, you cannot destroy the enemy. People today don't see it. The truth is this: a lot of parents today don't have the energy, don't have the time, don't take the time, don't have the energy, and they neglect to see the true enemy. They don't want the battle. They want the battle. My parents taught me this, and that is, I'd rather battle you over this, which is not as serious as that. They pick their battles, don't get me wrong. But they'd rather battle me over here than over there. And over here, to some people, may have seemed very silly. You follow me? My father, I went and got a haircut. Every time he went and got a haircut. He wasn't going to battle me over how long my hair was. I went and got it cut, and the man that cut hair was named Whit Hayes. We had a nickname for him, Wickham Wackham. Went up there and got my hair cut, boxed off up about right along here. He said, Pastor Ken, if you got it cut that high up, there won't much left. No, I had hair then. But if my father ever saw my hair touch my ears, time to go get a haircut. And it wasn't, Ken, do you want to go get a haircut? It wasn't a question. And it wasn't when I sat in the barber chair. And you know, I sat in that barber chair. You know how they used to take that barber chair and they put a little seat across there? I did that probably up to the time I got married. It wasn't a need for that barber to look at me, wickum wackum, and say, how you want it cut? I didn't have a voice in it. My father taught me, you pay the bills, you can do what you want. I'm paying this bill, and I'm going to do what I want. You know? He'd rather battle me over my hair so I'd have respect for him than something else. You say, well, that doesn't sound too smart. No, it was actually smart parenting. It kept me way on inside the line as opposed to right up to it. The enemy is real. Folks, God blessed us with children. He gave us the authority. He gave us the responsibility. And I'm sure every parent here could look back on how they raised their children, and they would see areas or things that they said, I should have done something different. And it's not to rehash those things. We all have that. But the fact is this, the enemy is still real today, all through the years. And if you have children that are bringing a smile to your face because they're doing that which is right in the eyes of God, be truly thankful. Be truly thankful. The enemy's real. Number 2, the enemy has a strategy. Satan, devil, whatever you want to call him, is not stupid. He has plenty of sense. He just uses it the wrong way. He's anti-God, against God. He's after our children, your children, my children. And the strategy that he has is not hard to understand. And that is this. He doesn't come on the scene dressed in a red suit and says, I'm the devil and I'm after you. He's more subtle. He's sneaky. When in the garden, the snake come on the scene, right? And number 1, it was a talking snake. That's a problem. But number 2, how many of you ever seen a snake walk? By the way, how many of you seen a snake this year? I have already seen a snake this year. How does a snake get about? He crawls on his belly, he slides around. How many of you ever touched a snake? Touched a snake. All right. When I see a snake, I see something that's slick and slimy. But they say a snake is not. I've never touched one. Folks, I'm scared of snakes. I'm not about to touch one. But that snake come on the scene. Oh, sneaky snake's what I call him. He's got a strategy. You know what the biggest thing that Satan uses for his advantage? Deception, yes. But he's patient. He chips away. He chips away. He chips away. They put images in front of our children. They put sound in front of our children, in their ears. That's Satan's work. That's his strategy. You ever thought about it? Sound and sight. Sound and sight. Why those two things? Appeals to the flesh. Sound and sight. I grew up in the day where music, I mean, let's face it, rock music ain't always been around. I don't think. Miss Judy, was it has it always around? Miss Dorothy, I don't know. Yeah. Elvis Presley. Let's face it, my parents, they said there's certain music you're not going to listen to. They told me what I could listen to. You know why? They were protecting me. And we need some folks today to say, you don't need to listen to this. You say, well, my children are grown. I can't tell them. Well, you can still tell them if they are listening to those things they shouldn't listen to. You can say, well, they don't need to listen to this. They don't need to see these things or see this. The television. It's a big thing. This generation, the generation prior to this, they didn't have a problem with television. Why? They didn't have a television. The television's old now. Y'all remember how big the TVs were? I mean, it'd take two people to pick it up and move it around. I mean, they started out in a cabinet and all this, and then they got down like this right here. You know, convenience with it. The television damaged the home. Nothing compared to what the internet's done. Nothing. Sight and sound. His strategy. You say, well, is the internet wrong? The internet can be used for good. But the internet has a lot of risk in it. Our job as parents, teach them and direct them, but also protect them from harm. The enemy has a strategy. The enemy has a message. How many of you know what an altar call is? Okay, what's the purpose of an altar call? Get someone saved, to pray. It's for you to make a decision. You ever thought about this? Satan is a copycat of God. Would you agree with me? You are aware that he gives an altar call? Not come to the altar per se, but he pushes a decision. Are you going to do it or no? He's real direct. He pushes a person to make a decision. His message is real simple. His message is self. Self-focus, self-esteem, self-love, self-satisfaction. Does that not sound like the generation we're living in today? Would you ever thought growing up that it would be like this? Self, self, self. Consider yourself first before everything. Does that not go against what God stresses? The enemy's real. The enemy has a strategy. The enemy has a message. And again, the enemy is seductive. He doesn't come on the scene with a sign that says, I'm Satan. He's disguised. You want to know why we got problems in school today? You say it's because of the home. I agree. The reason we have a problem in schools today is because Satan's after our children. He's already gone through the church, folks. He didn't like the church, he attacked the church. He didn't like the home, he attacked the home. He didn't like government, he attacked government. Destroyed it, pretty much, you might say. Anything that's good, he'll attack. So what do? You understand, parents are responsible for their children. To teach them, yes. And to train them, yes. To instruct them, yes. But where we're really failing, we're failing on that, don't get me wrong. But it started when we quit protecting them. It's a whole lot easier to put someone in front of something to let them watch them than to spend time with them. Whole lot easier. Well, you don't understand. I got all this. I got that. I got it. I'm just telling you. We need to watch what they're doing. We need to be in their business. Because if you're not, someone else is. Thank you for joining us at Riverside Baptist Church, Kenly, North Carolina. The complaint number is 1-800-WHAH-WHAH. Call us if we can help you. You may not like everything that was said, but I'll stand behind it. I'll stand behind it. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I'm not trying to cause any harm for anybody. I'm trying to make us all aware that Satan is real. He's after your children, your grandchildren. He's after you. He's after anything, and he is not a good enemy. And we can't deal with it alone. And God knows it. All right.